Please subscribe before watching the movie. Welcome back to Movies Recapped. The movie starts with our lead Ed Cole working his shift at the bagel shop. A couple comes in and they request to use the bathroom for canoodling. Ed rejects the request, which makes the couple angry and they call him a loser. The guy throws bagels at Ed and then the couple runs away. Ed is infuriated at the treatment and decides to quit the bagel shop. Later that night, Ed goes back to his apartment and finds his roommate JT canoodling with his girlfriend on Ed's bed. Ed is pissed, but he soon remembers that he's waiting for a letter from a school. JT hands Ed his mail and they both open it to learn that Ed has been rejected. Ed announces that he will go to the American Teaching Corps to give an interview for a post as a teacher. The next Ed goes to the American Teaching Corps. The interview goes well, and Ed manages to impress the principal. Ed gets a job as a teacher for an after-school program in another city. Ed goes back to his apartment to celebrate the news with JT and all. Ali suggests that Ed should move out. Ed likes the idea. The next ED moves out and moves into his new apartment in a Cuban. 2 days later, Ed starts his new job. In his first lesson, Ed learns that he's assigned after-school detention classes. One of the boys, Leon, starts freestyle rapping, and Ed is offended by how it is centered around canoodling. Just then one of the girls gets her period for the first time and she starts freaking out. Ed gets her a tampon, but she does not know what to do with it. Frustrated, Ed calls Ali for help. After a few hours, Ali shows up at school. Ali helps the girl out, and then when she's done, Ed suggests going to the bar underneath his apartment. Right as they're heading out, Ed finds a boy Tito waiting for his sister. Pilar. Ed is a garner the moment he sees Pilar coming their way. Later in the day, Ed and Ali meet with JT at the bar. JT suggests that Ed should canoodle with a girl who is less than attractive so he can get back in the game and find a good girl to start dating. JT tells Ed that he has a girl for him and he will set him up for a blind date, realizing just how sexually frustrated the students are. Ed decides to start a sex ed program the next day. Ed starts his class with the human body. The students are not interested, especially Leon, who starts making jokes, and so Ed has to send him to the principal's office after class. Ed is in the bathroom when Leon gets dragged in by his father, Reverend Hamilton, who forces Leon to wash his mouth with. Ed tries to step in by explaining that they were learning about the human body, but Reverend Hamilton does not want a teacher talking about sexual health to the children. Reverend Hamilton believes that it is the parents' responsibility to teach about it to their children. Later that day, Ed meets up with a girl named Trish on the blind date set by JT. Things start smoothly. Things get interesting when Trish gets drunk and turns into a fanatic. But then in a matter of seconds, Trish starts crying, saying that men always use her. Ed calls it off and sends Trish away. Ed opens up to his landlady, Sydney, who serves at the bar. Ed confesses that he feels like a loser. Sydney tells Ed to stop moping the next day at school. Ed starts with the topic of sexually transmitted diseases. Ed shows some graphic images. The presentation leaves kids scarred, but it also makes them realize the importance of it. After that, the kids are interested in what Ed has to. After class, Ed is sitting down with Tito waiting for Pilar. Pilar comes to them and tells Ed that he is Tito's favorite teacher. Pilar invites Ed to dinner saying that their mom, Lupe, wants to meet him. Ed accepts it, but all of a sudden he is very nervous. Ed comes to meet Tito's family. Lupe is very hospitable towards Ed. Pilar's boyfriend Hector has also joined them. Hector makes fun of Ed and Ed is offended. Hector challenges Ed to a rum drinking competition and Ed accepts. Ed gets overly drunk during dinner. He throws up on Lupe. Embarrassed, Ed rushes out of the next day, JT and Ali join Ed in his classes. Students share their questions and JT and Ali try their best to answer them. With JT and Ali's help, Ed can get his students interested in health. The next day, Tito and Ed are playing football after school. When Pilar comes to pick Tito up, Ed apologizes for his behavior at the dinner. Pilar tells him to let it go. Ed asks about Hector and Pilar tells Ed that they're on a. Seeing his opportunity, Ed asks Pilar out on a date. Pilar instantly agrees. The next day, Ed gets called to the principal's office. The principal has gotten to know about ED and his ambitious plans for sex addiction. The principal tells Ed to stop the classes or else Reverend Hamilton will take action against it. When students get to know this, they stop coming to. The next day, Ed goes to meet Reverend Hamilton to discuss his classes. Hamilton tells Ed that he does not believe in teaching about sex in school. Ed suggests that Hamilton come to class and observe his methodology. Hamilton agrees to come up the next day. Hamilton visits Ed during his class. Ed tries to maintain the decorum of the class and address the issues related to sex with respect. But the kids keep on making fun. Hamilton is not happy and he leaves the class. Ed tries to stop him, but Hamilton calls him a joke of a teacher, which makes Ed stop right on his feet. Later that day, Tito comes to Ed and asks him for a condom, saying that his girlfriend is ready to canoodle with him. Ed tells Tito that he's too young for canoodling, but Tito threatens that he'll do it without the condom as Ed has no choice but to hand him the condom from school. Ed goes straight to the bar where he has to meet Pilar for their date. Ed looks exhausted and so Pilar asks him what happened. Ed comes clean and tells that Tito is going toll that night. Pilar is furious that Ed even handed Tito a condom. Tito tells Ed to take her to their house as Lupe is not home at Pila's house. Ed and Pilar find Tito kissing his girlfriend. Pilar is furious and she tells Tito's girlfriend and Ed to leave. Ed is stunned, but has no other choice but to leave the house. As Ed is walking back to his car, Hector stops him and confronts him as to why he just left Pila's house. When Ed defends himself saying that Pilar can do whatever she wants, Hector beats him up. Once Hector leaves that alone, Ed gets up and drives away. On his way back, Ed decides to have sex with a prostitute. Ed hires a woman walking down the street just as they were about to begin. The police showed up and took them to the police station. The next day the principal tells Ed that he is fired. Ed goes straight to Sydney and talks about the recent events. Sydney tells Ed to be a man and win back. Pilar Ed agrees and goes to Pila's house. At Pila's house, Ed plays the elbow to her and asks for another chance. Pilar is impressed and agrees to go on a second date with Ed. The two of them then take a stroll in the city. As this comes to an end with the sunset, Ed takes Pilar in his arms and kisses her later in the night. Pilar takes Ed to a club. The bouncer is Pila's friend, so he let him in, but since it's already too crowded, the bouncer does not let Ed. Pilar tells Ed that she will be back after saying hi to her friends. Turns out Hector is in line for the club too. Hector sees Ed and confronts him again. This time, Ed punches Hector. The bouncer calls the police and Ed has to go with the police the next day. Ed is motivated by his anger. Ed decides to visit Reverend Hamilton's support group with the school kids at his church. Ed talks to the group about the importance of sexual education. Ed confesses that he's still a virgin. The kids support Ed by expressing that they now think differently about sex because of Ed. Leon stands up and says to his dad that he cannot ask about sex to him because he is his dad, but he can ask about it too. Ed Hamilton is impressed by Ed and decides to allow him to resume. Later that day, Pilar visits Ed at his apartment. Pilar tells Ed that she wants to be his first partner, right? Then JT knocks on Ed's door asking him to come down. Ed tells Pilar that he does not want to canoe right that second. Pilar is offended and leaves Ed angrily. With Pilar gone, Ed heads to the bar with JT. At the bar, Ali and Sydney await Ed. Sydney tells Ed that he is a real man now as he has his life in control. Sydney tells Ed that real manhood is not about canoodling, but rather about having a woman and still being sad about it. Ed agrees with Sydney as he breaks a smile. A year later, a new student is complaining about getting sex education with Ed. Leon walks by the new student and tells him that Ed is the real deal, right? Then Ed gets off his car and then walks toward the school beaming with respect, knowing that he's the most popular teacher. What you think about this one? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.